Hello everyone, Cindy here with Monarch Mom DIY. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel where I love to bring you the best tips and tools to encourage you to create beautiful home decor on a budget. Today I have a little bit of a different video for you. I have 5 thrift store flips for you, 5 items that I found at the thrift store this past week, things I encourage you to look for as well when you go thrift store shopping. And I loved giving each of these items a brand new life. So with all that being said, let's get crafting. I always love looking at thrift stores for really cool frames, and I found this very rustic looking frame. I believe it was originally from Hobby Lobby, and it's kind of an oblong shape. So all I did for this is I removed the nails. It must have had some sort of canvas in it at one point, had a little hanger on the back. I actually did nothing to the front of this frame. What I did do is I took some 5-gallon paint sticks from Walmart and I cut them down to 10-inch pieces. I was able to get 2 pieces out of each of the 5-gallon paint sticks. So you can see some of them have the little handle, but I kind of liked that it had those holes. It made it look a little more rustic. So I needed 14 pieces to go completely across the back of my frame. So I took a piece of wide painter's tape and kind of taped all of these sticks together. This is a new method for me. This is the second time I've done it, and it actually does make painting the sticks go a lot faster. So with all 14 of my pieces taped together on the back, I'm taking some water and just spritzing it on the sticks, and then taking my Waverly antique wax. I'm going to brush it on and then add a little bit more water and wipe off the excess. The water just helps the antique wax spread a little better and not use quite as much. So like I said, we'll spritz a little bit more water on it and then take our paper towels and wipe away the excess to reveal that beautiful wood grain for all of our paint sticks. And then we'll set these aside to let them dry. So while I was thinking what to do with this frame, I was going through my stash and saw this home sign that I've had from Dollar Tree for a couple of years. I decided to add this to my project, so I'm painting the H and the M with my white Waverly chalk paint. And then to keep this project neutral, I'm going to paint the O and the E with my mineral gray. Once our paint sticks were all the way dry, we're going to flip our frame over to the back, and now using hot glue, we're just going to line up and attach down one of those paint sticks at a time until we have all 14 completely covering the back of our frame. Once the paint on our home sign was dry, I did take my little sander and just distress the edges just a little bit. But of course, this is whatever your preference is, whether you leave it solid or distress the edges. The other thing I chose to add to this sign is this little wreath from the Target Dollar Spot. This was originally $3. I'm just going to hang this from the top of the frame, standing tall, with this black and white checked gingham ribbon. I just love this, and I feel like this is a great versatile piece that you could make whatever colors you want and could add to any decor to be kept up year round. So just folding over the piece of ribbon with the wreath on it, we'll glue it onto the back here at the top. First, the bottom layer of the ribbon, get that down nice and secure, and then glue down the other end as well. Then our last step will be to glue the home sign down here towards the bottom, just marking where I'm going to need to put glue on the back of the H and the E, and then stick that down, attaching it to the frame. And here's our finished thrift store flip number 1. Started out with just this rustic frame that I picked up for about $7. If you're stopping by my channel for the first time today, welcome. I'm so glad that you found me. I hope you'll consider sticking around by hitting that subscribe button. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. I hope everyone will be sure to tap that bell and make sure that your notifications are set to all, so YouTube should let you know each time I upload a new video or go live here on my channel. Our second thrift store find that we're going to give new life to are these wall sconces that scream 1980s. I thought they were gorgeous. There were 2 of them and they had their glass intact. So the first thing I did once I removed all the tape and got the glass out and cleaned everything is we're going to give our wood wall sconces a couple coats of my white Waverly chalk paint. Next, taking some Mod Podge, I'm going to pour some in this little cup, and I'm going to add just 1 drop of blue food coloring. I saw this idea on Heidi Sambul DIY, and this is a really cool way you can color glass. So once I put that 1 drop of the food coloring in and mix it up really well, I'm actually going to use a foam brush, and I'm going to brush this on the outside of my 2 glass pieces that go in the sconces, and it's going to give them a really nice blue tint. I am going to do this 2 times just to make it a little bit darker. So here's what they looked like after the first coat dried, and then I did go ahead and do a second coat. Now, once my sconces were dry of the paint, I did take them out to the garage and do a coat of a clear matte spray because I am planning on stenciling on the front of the sconces. So once that was dry, I'm taking some painter's tape and I'm just taping off the beveled edge there. I'm just wanting my stencil to go on the very front of each of the 2 sconces. So now putting the backing sheet for my stencil underneath my sconces, I'm taking my fleur-de-lis all over pattern stencil and I'm lining it up right there where the little shelf starts on each of the sconces. I'm trying to keep them right next to each other and laying the stencil out and pressing it down really well so I can do both of the sconces at one time. The stencil is plenty big to be able to do that, and I'm going to stencil these in cool gray. Once we have the top part of each of the sconces stenciled, we can peel our stencil and reveal that gorgeous classic pattern. I'm going to take my sconces and turn them and just use a different part of the stencil to get the little piece that is underneath the shelf. This again was easy to do without having to clean my stencil, and then I just cleaned it once I was completely done with the two tops and the two bottoms of our sconces. I really love how the chalk paint and this stencil pattern just gave these an elevated, more modern look. And then I was able to peel off the painter's tape and have that nice clean edge. All I did then is return my tinted glass to each of the sconces and just added a little battery powered tea light to each one. My third thrifted item for this video is this little blue house shelf. This was originally from the Target Bullseye's Playground for $5. I paid less than $2 for it. The color was cute, but I wanted to make it a little less bright. So I'm taking my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just going to paint around all of the outside edges and then inside the top and bottom and sides of each of the spaces. I'm not going to worry about painting the back of each space because we're going to add some really pretty scrapbook paper in there instead. Once the paint was dry, I did do a clear matte spray over my house, and then I'm taking a ruler and I'm trying to measure the inside of each of the spots. So those two, the left and the right, are about the same size, and the middle one is a little more narrow. So I'm just measuring them, and then I'm going to use my paper trimmer to cut my scrapbook paper to fit inside those three spaces at the bottom. I did the same thing for those two spaces on the middle level. I just cut the rectangle and then popped the rectangle in there and kind of pressed down where that angled edge is. You'll see me do it here. So here's our rectangle, and then we're going to press it inside, and then I'm going to use my fingernail to kind of mark where I need to cut the paper to get that little angle on the outside edge. I just trimmed that little piece off with my scissors, and we're good to go. Now for the triangle at the top, it took a little bit more measuring. I measured the length of the bottom of the triangle and first cut the width of my paper to fit that. Then I'm going to cut how tall the triangle is at the top, at the point, and cut the height of my paper. Then I'm marking where the center is, and I'm using my trimmer to cut the two angles from the top of the triangle to the bottom left corner, and then again to the right. So it did take a little bit of measuring and then cutting the paper to get them to all fit perfectly in the spaces. But then once I had all my pieces cut, I'm just going to take some Mod Podge and apply it to the back of each space and then lay the paper down. It's amazing how you can transform something like this with just a few little pieces of paper. I did try to choose papers that had a little bit of the blue because I did make it so that you could still see a little bit of the blue peeking through the plaster paint. And I just love how this turned out. And I feel like a little shelf like this can be used for so many things. You can display little knickknacks in it. You can do little trinkets, whatever you'd like. And here's just an example of some things that you could put in it as well. If you're on Facebook, I would love it if you would follow my Monarch Mom DIY Facebook page. I do go live there about 3 times a week doing different projects than what I'm showing here on YouTube. For the fourth thrifted item, I'm using this metal tray that I found for under $2. I'm also going to use a stencil, some chalk paint, and this chunky wood heart from Dollar Tree. So the first thing I decided to do with my tray is I'm going to use my Moss Waverly chalk paint. I believe, use 2 coats of this to completely cover the center portion of the tray up to the edge. While that's drying, I'm taking the chunky wooden cross and I'm first of all filling the hole in with some hot glue. This is something you can use besides the wood filler, and it's a little bit easier because you can actually press it in to fill that deep hole. Then once that was dry, I'm going to use my antique wax and a baby wipe to darken this up and give it a nice dark stained look. Once the moss paint on the center of my tray was dry, I took my white Waverly chalk paint and I'm going to now paint the entire raised edge, including the little scroll pattern that is on there as well. So I'm switching to a smaller brush to go around the edge closest to the moss, but I'm going to show you a little bit later what I'm going to do to make that not have to be so perfect. I did try to get as close to that edge as I could before the tray starts dipping downwards. I did do a coat of clear matte spray over the white and the moss. And then you can see I'm taking this little scraper from Walmart and I'm just using it lightly on the edge right there between the 2 colors. This was my idea for how to kind of make it okay that the paint job wasn't perfect, and it also added to a little bit of the rustic look of the tray. So I didn't make it perfect. You can see there's a little white in some places on the moss, but just scraping that space between the 2 colors really did help to blend it all together. Next, I'm going to take this little scrubby sponge and I'm going to put some celery Waverly chalk paint on it. I'm going to lightly drag it around the edge of our tray, and this is going to make it pop out the scroll pattern in the celery. And then I will get a little bit on either side of the white edge on the outside of the tray and also where it matches up with the moss. Now, while the tray is drying, I'm going to come back to our cross, and to help cover up the hole from the hanger, I'm going to attach some jute twine on the back, and I'm just going to wrap it about 5 or 6 times around this top piece and hot glue it back onto the back, trim it off, and I'm going to do this on the top and on both side pieces of our cross. Then I also decided to take this unfinished wood heart from Dollar Tree and glue that to the top of the cross as well. Now, once my tray was dry of paint, I did spray it with another coat of matte finish spray so that then I could stencil this Bible verse on the front and not be afraid that the stencil would pull up any of the paint. So once the paint was sealed in, I'm just centering my Bible verse onto the center, and then I'm going to use some white chalk paint. It's going to say, "While we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Then for the last step, I'm just going to take that chunky wood cross and hot glue this to the edge of the metal tray. And I adore this. I think it looks beautiful and could stay up all year long. If you love budget home decor DIY videos like this, I hope you'll give this video a thumbs up, as that lets YouTube know people are enjoying my content and they'll show it to more and more viewers. The final thrift store item I'm going to flip in this video is this ladder shelf with the cat on it. Very 80s. And I'm going to add some items. I'm going to show you how you can take a shelf like this once we remove the little kitty cat, and we're going to make this a base that you could then change out, kind of like a tiered tray for the seasons and the holidays. So we're just going to give this a good cleaning, might sand it a little bit, and then I'm going to do a kind of a rough, not solid coat of white Waverly chalk paint, and then I'll show you some little items that you could make to decorate it for the different seasons and holidays. Once I had it painted and I sanded it down a little bit, I did spray this with the clear matte spray. Now I have this heart and I wanted to first of all paint this white and make it a little more neutral. I'm actually going to glue this over the heart cutout just to make it look a little bit more modern. So I'm just giving this a coat or two of white paint, and then we're going to stencil the word family on it. I'm also going to paint a couple of these tumbling tower blocks with white. We're going to use these as a little stand for something else. Just going through my stash, I was just finding little things that I could decorate with the Valentine's theme to add to this ladder shelf. I found this wood spool, so I'm just going to give this a coat of this vintage rose color, and then we'll add some scrapbook paper and a bow to this. Next, I'm going to take some of my crimson red chalk paint, and I have these large square wood pieces. They were actually like big Scrabble pieces from Hobby Lobby, but we're just going to use the back. So I'm just going to give them a coat of the paint, and then we'll use some poster sticker letters to add to these as well. Now coming back to our spool, here you can see the little white with black heart scrapbook paper, and then I'm going to glue a little piece of ribbon around the center and then glue a little black bow with this same ribbon. So this is just giving you some ideas of little things, like I said, that you could use to decorate this small little shelf, kind of like a tiered tray, but for smaller spaces, and it hangs on the wall. Next, now that our white paint on our heart is dry, I am just going to give this a coat of Mod Podge so that we can then stencil it and not peel up any of the paint. Coming back to my two red squares, I'm going to use an X and an O from my Dollar Tree poster letters. Just stick these down on the front of my squares, and actually this O was a Q. I didn't have any more O's, so I just cut the little tail piece off and made it into an O. Once those were on, I am going to use Mod Podge over the front to make sure the sticker stays down and just to give a nice finished look to the front of our little Scrabble tiles. Then once those were dry, I'm just going to put a little hot glue on the back and attach one of the tumbling tower blocks to the back as a little stand so that these letters, the X and the O, can stand up on our ladder tiered shelf. And now coming back to our white heart, I'm going to use this stencil from the Farmhouse rolling pins and just a little tiny bit of black chalk paste and stencil the word family on the center of this heart. We'll let that dry, and then in a moment you'll see where I'm going to glue it on our ladder shelf. I decided to take this round tassel of beads that I got from Dollar Tree, just like they are with the tassel. I punched a hole in one of these little red hearts from Dollar Tree, and I'm just tying it to the center of the bead strand just to make it a little more Valentine, and I can add this to my ladder shelf as well. I am going to tie a small little bow with the jute twine and glue that right over the hole. And here's where we're going to hot glue that white heart on. Just kind of elevate this, make it look a little bit more modern with the clean lines rather than that chunky heart cutout. And then I decided to take a couple of furniture tacks, and I'm just going to gently halfway hammer these into each side of our little ladder. And I made this as a place where you could hang a small little banner garland for decorating for each season or holiday. And then on this, I'm going to use a little, I think it's from Hobby Lobby, these little felt hearts that are on this baker's twine. So we're just going to tie one end, string a few of them in the middle, and then tie the other end. So here's all the little items I have for my little ladder tiered shelf. I hope this gives you some ideas of how you could take something like this for a small space and make a little holiday decorative shelf. Thanks again so much for joining me today. Please let me know in the comments, what is your favorite item to look for when you go thrift store shopping, and which of my 5 projects did you enjoy the best? Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.